We had a few friends that got arrested, but I kept that. Oh, I know you talking about walking down the street.
Comrades and allies who spoke out against the regressive policies of the G20. The G20 resulted in the largest mass arrest in Canada, which showed mainstream society that a glimpse of police violence. And this is not to exceptionalize the G20 moment, but to draw out the fact that mainstream society saw a glimpse of what marginalized communities face here on a daily basis.
I spoke out and I said stuff that the cops didn't like. You know, last month my friend Chris was killed by the Toronto City Police. He was beaten down. He got charged, got arrested, he went to jail for the weekend. He came out on Monday. Tuesday morning his girlfriend woke him up and he was dead in bed because of what happened from that beating the police gave him.
A larger and more aggressive police presence, both in communities and at meetings or events that occur where people speak out against the police or speak out against banks and corporations or question their purpose in the first place.
Last night I was on my way home back to where I stay and I got stopped by the police. I was with my friends. Next thing you know, they're trying to tell me I'm resisting arrest, right? Trying to tell me I'm resisting arrest. And I wasn't resisting nothing. They kicked the shit out of me. I spent the night in the hospital. They're telling me I speak too much, I talk too much, you know? And look at me today. But I'm standing here and I'm standing up and I'm fighting back and I'm not afraid.
Yeah! To convey a message to them, to the police, who are all around us right now, that we have the will and the capacity to resist and that we will continue to do so. Thank you.
Roughly 6 years and 10 days ago, on March 5th, there was a demonstration much like this one, right here in front of 51 Division. It was for the deportation of Wendy Maxwell, who was a beloved community activist and a programmer at CKLN Community Radio. She was picked up by cops from the Toronto 51 Division at CKLN when she was tabling and selling baked cookies for a fundraiser at CKLN. They came in, they picked her up, they reported her to detention authorities, immigration enforcement authorities, and she was deported shortly after.
And today I'm here in the memory of Awi on the Deer, in the memory of Junior Manon. I know back in the day there was a saying, you know, don't mourn, organize, and certainly I think that we should keep that always in mind, but I think we should also dignify those people that are no longer with us. So in that, I'm just going to ask for a brief moment of silence so that also the people who may be watching this in the media realize that part of the dimension of the things that we're speaking about today is also the number of people who have been killed by police. So I'll ask for a brief moment of silence.
Collusion between the police and immigration enforcement is not new. It has gone on for a very long time and it goes on today. Just on December 24th, a lot of us were out in Parkdale where 18-year-old Daniel Garcia, an 18-year-old student from Mexico, was racially profiled on the streets when he was crossing at King and Jameson. He was racially profiled, he was ID'd, and then he was handed over to...
They say there's no racial profile.
And he was handed over to immigration enforcement. He was deported on January 1st, 2011.
The first officer responded by punching Mr. Manon several times on the right side of the head and the right chest area. Two of the civilian witnesses said that there are at least some of these blows involved striking Mr. Manon with a walkie-talkie. The second officer attempted to subdue Mr. Manon by wrapping his arm around his head and upper arm area. One of his arms may have been placed briefly around Mr. Manon's neck. Later on, concludes that during the struggle with the two subject officers after he fell or was taken to the ground, pressure was placed on his chest in a manner that could have caused it to compress and interfere with his breathing, a classic indicia of death caused by positional asphyxia. In particular, there is no unequivocal medical evidence of neck compression and no external injury to the neck, while there is some evidence of internal bleeding to the neck area.
So there is a lot of violence. The violence of police officers strolling through the halls of our schools, armed, in uniform. Their brothers and sisters harassing students on the way to school, searching knapsacks, accusing them of stealing, accusing them of being someone who looks like someone who might have been in the neighborhood at the time that something might have happened, and therefore we're going to take you in. That is violence, that kind of constant harassment.
The SIU was created in 1990 to dispel concerns about the police investigating police. But in 2008, the Ontario Ombudsman concluded that among the serious problems were endemic delays and lack of rigor in SIU investigations, a reluctance to insist on police cooperation, and an internal culture overtly influenced by preponderance of ex-police officers amongst its staff. What the issue was supposed to have addressed is the exact opposite. It's still police investigating police. So it should come as no surprise the fact that they look at the evidence and conclude that all these situations where police murder people, where they kill people, where people become seriously injured as a result of their altercations with police, they find them innocent.
There are many, many, many people in this city who cannot even use the services, as bad as they are, of the Toronto Police because they are undocumented. And so we have women whose abusive partners call the police, tell the police that they are here illegally. And those police officers, once they come into that information, turn those women, victims of violence, over to the Canada Border Services Agency, over to immigration.
One of the recommendations in 2008 was also to amend legislation to make it an offense for police forces not to cooperate with the SIU, which was the exact thing that the SIU said that the reason why they couldn't charge any police officers during the G20, because they didn't cooperate with them.
Anytime any little thing would happen, the police would be called into the high school. When we have some social services in this city, anytime there's a little bit of a fuss, they call the police to come in. We have got to stop doing that. They are not good at conflict resolution. They actually usually make conflicts worse. They are not good at social work. They don't receive that training. They receive far more training on weapons and using weapons than they do on how to talk to people. They are not good at any of this stuff. They certainly aren't good guidance counselors. I don't know how they do as football coaches, but maybe we'll leave that to Rob Ford.
So in all this, we have to remember that the actions of police in the G20, which some of you may have experienced, and which I'm sure is something that is present in a lot of your minds right now, is cultivated by an atmosphere of impunity that they have been permitted to operate under. The SIU acts to whitewash their actions and insulates them from actual public scrutiny and responsibility. The SIU as it is cannot be repaired and is not willing to change. Their obvious disregard for the Ombuds report actually proves that.
So why do we bring them into these situations? Why do we justify an almost $1 billion police budget per year by giving them more and more to do? We have to stop that. We have to cut back how police are involved in our lives. We have to stop calling them and learn how to solve these problems ourselves. We have to learn how to support each other and deal with whatever violence or issues come up in our own communities. We need to learn to do that and be self-sufficient, because these men and women do not know how to do it. It ends up with people getting killed when they don't need to be killed.
But in the meantime, we need actual measures to disarm the tools that police have to continue to get away with abuses and, in certain areas, murder. The SIU is not a support for the public, it's a tool for the police. Disband it and create a real independent public body with the ability to investigate and press charges for police misconduct. But we won't get there unless we continue to organize, continue to overcome this sort of intimidation and fear. If the Egyptians and Palestinians and countless others can do it facing tanks, then we can do it also. Todo poder al pueblo.
I lost a son in November 2007, shot by police in Kitchener. Since that day, I've done a lot of research on why they do what they do. And I say they because they talk about us as them, right?
To begin with, I gotta thank the OCAP crowd for coming out and organizing this today. The elders in OCAP have taught a lot of us younger activists a lot of the lessons and experiences, and we're definitely grateful for that. And although we got really short notice of this rally today, a couple of days ago, we're definitely happy to be out here today. and also talk a little bit about the work we're doing out in the Esplanade neighborhood, which is just down the street over there, and those projects down there.
We are citizens. We are people that should be protected, should be revered, are important. Don't minimize the sex workers. Don't minimize people. People are people. You have families, and I'm looking right at you. You have families. Would you want your families treated the same way that we've heard these stories here today? I don't think so. So think about that. Think about that when you go home to your families and think, you know, my son was shot through the heart. Think about it.
And actually, I want to make it very clear that us in the Esplanade Community Group, our method of organizing is long-term class struggle community organizing, the patient organizing, of building a large movement.
A lot of people here have been shot and killed. A lot in Toronto, a lot in Hamilton, one in Kitchener, you know. And look at the stats. You know, even the Kitchener police actually have higher stats of use of force complaints than Toronto does per capita.
As the economic crisis leads to growing unemployment, as the austerity cuts cut our services, as our youth are prevented from ever advancing themselves in our communities, the cops are sent in to clean up the mess, to sweep it under the rug, to toss us in these prisons that they're building up. As the property values in the downtown core go up, and high-profile investment comes in to build up condos and whatever else, the cops are sent in to clear the streets out of our communities. They target our youth.
My first thing I was going to talk about is the assault and the attack and I guess the war on youth that we've been experiencing in Toronto. No matter what poor community you're from, it seems like there's harassment for just being baggy clothed or having piercings in your face or just generally hanging out on the corner doing nothing wrong. Like, it seems like everywhere I go I get harassed, or anywhere anybody I hang out with gets harassed and beaten and threatened by the police just because of our age.
They target people of color. They target working people, and especially after the G20, the kind of arrogance has resulted in even harassing and assaulting some of our elders, even white elders in our community. This is what's happened over the last bit. Now, the Esplanade Community Group, one of the major issues we've organized around, and particularly among our youth, is police brutality. We've organized forums on the issue, we've run educationals, legal defense educationals, and done exposures whenever there's been cases of police brutality in our community.
I was personally attacked in Esplanade for using my own stairwell. Used the stairwell, I was trying to go down the stairs, I was beaten by police, throwing down the stairs. You know what I mean? That's what got me involved in this. If it wasn't for the Esplanade Community Group, I don't think that I'd ever get involved. We need more people, we need more cop watches, we need more people to stop calling the police on the kid that's hanging out on the corner, because you say, yeah, he's making noise, but then he comes and gets beat by it. That could be your child next time.
We've also organized our own cop watch program in our neighborhood wherever we could, to put our youth activists on the streets. Whenever we get word from our youth or our fellow residents that someone's getting harassed or brutalized by the cops, we try to go out there and keep watch on those cops in whatever capacity we can.
All I wanted to say was, like, you need to start to realize that your youth are the targets. You know what I mean? Our activists are targets. High school kids shouldn't be going to school and search. High school kids should be going to school to learn. That's all I have to say.
Yeah, we realize that there are no appeals to human rights or police complaint boards or the SIU, the Special Investigations Unit, are gonna bear no fruit or no justice for our communities, and these cops know that. We realize that the only way to protect our communities, to protect our interests, our safety, is to go and do it ourselves, through our organized power. That's what it's gonna take. And this is what people are beginning to realize in this country.
Many of us in this community, in this city of Toronto, have fought for many years for police to be sensitive to the cultural and economic and political needs of the community, that they can act in a manner that will prevent the death of our people. Your presence here this evening is an indication that something is wrong. For where there is no justice, there can be no peace. That's right. There can be no respect. Where there is no peace, the whole nation suffers.